I think we have come to the final part of our recombinant DNA technology, so in which how the vectors are designed for an animal cell. It is highly versatile in case of a plant cell because the genetic manipulation is easily acceptable, whereas in case of an animal cell culture it is not that easy. So integration as well as even the size of DNA what you are going to integrate is also very critical, basically because of what is known as the dosage compensation. Probably you have studied that in case of genetics, in fact. So before we look into the vectors, we will first discuss about how the clones in case of an animal cell is identified. So what is the selection? Because antibiotic resistant gene, whether it is kanamycin or the other one is the methotrexate, or so many things, is not at all possible in case of an animal cell culture because none of these chemicals do kill the animal cell. So that gives a challenge, like how are we going to identify the whole process? In case of an yeast, I think we have developed by the process of an auxotrope. So here we don't have an auxotrope. So here we have to study the metabolism of key important molecules, especially the purines and the pyrimidine, because they are very important for the synthesis of genetic material, that is the nucleic acid, and it is very important in case of a cell division. Okay, now the synthesis of this purine and pyrimidine, it can be done by two mechanisms. One is what you call this as a de novo biosynthesis. And if the de novo biosynthesis is not functional, since it is very critical, we also have what is known as a salvage pathway. So we are going to exploit this de novo biosynthesis, and another one is going to be the salvage pathway. So now we have an example for the pyrimidine nucleotide. So now this is the deoxyuridinonyl monophosphate. Now this uridinyl monophosphate will be converted into thymidine monophosphate. So because I'm not going to discuss the entire detail of nucleotide metabolism, you have already studied that. The key steps are very important. Now in case of a de novo synthesis, deoxyuridinol monophosphate conversion into TMP is carried out by the enzyme thymidine synthase. Now thymidine synthase requires a cofactor, tetrahydrofolic acid. Alright, now we can block this tetrahydrofolic acid using an analog of tetrahydrofolic acid, that is going to be the aminopterin. Okay, suppose like you take a cell and then if you add aminopterin, then what happens? The synthesis of this nucleic acid is going to be completely blocked. So de novo synthesis is going to be blocked. So in the absence of de novo synthesis, then the cell will switch over to what we call this as a salvage pathway. So in this inhibition, so now still we are able to get the thymidine monophosphate by activating another pathway. So in which thymidine is directly converted into thymidine monophosphate with the enzyme thymidine kinase. So now this is the when in the absence of de novo synthesis, a salvage pathway will take up. Now that is going to be the thymidine kinase. Now simultaneously what happens? So we also have in case of the purine metabolism. Okay. Now this HGPRT. Now this is hypoxanthine guanine phosphoribosyl transferase. So now this one is also completely the synthesis of, for example, IMP is also blocked because of the aminopterin. Now we can also generate IMP using the now this is the salvage pathway. So in case of a salvage pathway, hypoxanthine is converted into IMP with the enzyme HGPRT. I think I've discussed hypoxanthine guanine phosphoribosyl transferase. So now what happens is that in case of the salvage pathway, hypoxanthine is converted into IMP. I think I will repeat. I think this particular portion is very clear. Now in the presence of an aminopterin, even the synthesis of purine is blocked, IMP is blocked. So we don't have, so aminopterin will block the synthesis of pyrimidine as well as the synthesis of purine. So the critical one is the loss of TMP in case of the pyrimidine and the loss of IMP in case of the purine. So this, in case of a salvage pathway, thymidine is converted into TMP with the thymidine kinase. So in case of IMP, hypoxanthine is converted into IMP with the help of HGPRT. Now this is the salvage pathway. Now what they are going to do, that one is, guys. So we have the cell, we knock out this particular cell, this particular enzyme, thymidine kinase is knocked out. Okay. So once if you do not have this thymidine kinase, so now then I think we have to supplement the medium. So the medium contains aminopterin. Okay, now the selection is based on TK plus and TK minus. So now this is the heart medium is nothing but it contains hypoxanthine, aminopterin. Another one is going to be the thymidine, in fact. So now in the presence of heart medium, so the TK minus, they will not survive, basically because so thymidine kinase is completely knocked out, and we are also blocking the de novo pathway using the aminopterin. So now then what happens, the TK minus cells, they do not survive. So now for the survival of this particular one, we have to introduce thymidine kinase. Then we have to supplement hypoxanthine and thymidine. So we are creating an auxotropic condition. So I repeat, in case of a de novo biosynthesis, aminopterin blocks thymidine synthase and it inhibits the synthesis of TMP, that is with respect to the pyrimidine, and in case of the purine it is the IMP. Now in case of a de novo salvage pathway, thymidine converted into TMP using the thymidine kinase, that is the salvage pathway. Then in case of an IMP, so we have the hypoxanthine is converted into IMP using the HGPRT. Now for the clonal selections, what happens, this thymidine kinase gene is mutated, it is not functional anymore. So in the absence of thymidine kinase, so now then we are going to have the TK minus strain. Now the TK minus strain, in the presence of in order to rejuvenate the salvage pathway, we are going to add hypoxanthine as well as thymidine. But since the thymidine kinase is not functional, so now these things is not going to survive. But if you do take a cell and if you supplement that cell with thymidine kinase, so then what happens in the presence of aminopterin, if you supplement hypoxanthine and if you supplement thymidine, so we are activating the salvage pathway. So then the TK plus, so the cell which has got a thymidine kinase, they will survive. So now this is what is called as a TK plus and TK minus salvage pathway, in fact. So now this is how we are going to identify the animal cell culture in case of a cloning. So we always have to have a hat medium. You have to understand what exactly is a hat medium. Hat medium contains aminopterin, which is an analog of THF, which inhibits thymidine synthase. Okay, so then the de novo synthesis is completely blocked. Then we have to activate the salvage pathway. So for salvage pathway, I think we require thymidine kinase. So another one is going to be the HGPRT enzyme. So most of the times it is going to be the TK plus and TK minus, but not the HGPRT. So in order to have the thymidine kinase to be functional, I think we have to supplement both hypoxanthine. Another one is going to be the thymidine into the medium. So then in the heart medium, so now the regular cells do not survive because of the aminopterin. And since the cells is also lacks thymidine kinase, it will not survive. Then we have to provide this thymidine kinase through the vector, in fact. So that will make TK minus to TK plus. So this is the phenotypic TK plus and TK minus are the phenotypic way in which we are going to identify the clonal selection in case of an animal cell. So now as an example, so which is the vectors which is going to be used. So we will discuss about the Samian virus, commonly called as SV40. It is Samian vacuolating virus 40. So we commonly call this as an SV40. So like phage lambda phage, we also have to study the life cycle of this SV40 in fact. Usually these viruses are prokaryotes, but this will get integrated into a eukaryotic system. Then we have to understand, like in case of a TI plasmid, the promoters are all very active in a eukaryotic system. So we will try to understand the life cycle of an SV40, and then we will see how this SV40 is useful for the designing vectors for an animal cell culture. So the SV40 is a small circular DNA consisting of 5243 bases. So now this particular genetic material can be isolated or can be characterized in 3 different forms. We call this as form 1, form 2 and form 3. So now when you do take this form 1, form 2 and form 3 DNA, and if you subject this on a centrifugal separation, so now this can sediment at 20 years, 16 years and 14 years in fact. So now the form 1, we call this as CCC DNA. It is covalently covalently closed circular DNA. So now this is CCC DNA. Now this particular one for sure, I mean, also has a lot of histone proteins attached to that one. So so because of the attachment of the histones, I think we are going to have 24 nucleosomes. The common histone proteins which is present in this particular vector, the virus is H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. The histone H1 is completely absent in fact. So the form 1, so which is sediment at 20 years, is covalently closed circular DNA, called this as CCC DNA, and this is not a naked DNA. It contains 24 nucleosomes in combination with H2A, H2B, H3, H4 histone proteins. Now suppose if this particular one has got a nick in, since it is a double stranded, so if there is a nick in one of these strands, now that one is going to be relaxed DNA. Okay, so now suppose if this is only with one, suppose if you just linearize the whole DNA, there is a double stranded cut, so circular DNA is like a linear DNA. Now that is another form. So form 1, form 2, form 3. So we are going to have the CCC DNA, relaxed DNA, then we are going to have the linear DNA. So now this particular DNA, this is about the genetic material. Now this genetic material is encapsulated in a coat protein. So now the DNA, that is genetic material of SV40, is encapsulated in a protein coat, what is called as a capsid. So now if you try to characterize these capsid proteins, I think majorly we are going to find 3 proteins. So the major one is a capsid protein. It is called as a VP1. The size of this VP1 is 47,000 Dalton. But in this SV40, so we are going to have 420 subunits of VP1 protein. So now that is the capsid protein. Then we also have a small amount of structural proteins, or we call this minor polypeptides, VP2 and VP3. So now this is the overall structure. Now there is a circular DNA and there is a capsid protein. So this DNA, the genetic material, is encapsulated into that. Unlike phage DNA or any other DNA, now this DNA is consisting of 24 nucleosomes with all kind of histone proteins attached to that one. We can also call this as a mini chromosome. I would say that one. All right. Now, when it comes to the life cycle, Now this the SV40 also has got a lytic cycle, and we also have a lysogeny cycle. So in case of the previous lytic and lysogeny with the lambda phage, so you are going to have that with the same host, that is E. coli, but the level of regulatory elements will determine whether it should enter into lytic cycle or a lysogeny cycle. But here it is the type of host determines whether this SV40 will enter into lytic cycle or it will enter into the lysogeny cycle. So what we call this as a permissible cells, okay, or non-permissible cell in fact. So in case of the lambda DNA, it is the regulatory elements. The level of regulatory elements will determine whether the lambda DNA should enter into lytic cycle or a lysogeny cycle. So here in this SV40, it is not the regulatory elements, it is the host will determine whether, so we are going to have the lytic cycle or we have the lysogeny cycle. So depending upon the host, we are going to call this as a permissible cells. So in case of a lytic, so now a cell, a host which will allow the SV40 to enter into lytic cycle, we call this as a permissible cells. The host which will not allow this one to get into the lytic cycle, instead lytic, we are going to have the lysogeny. So we call this as a non-permissible cell. So which are all the permissible one? It is going to be the monkey kidney cells. Suppose if you take the monkey kidney cells, if you infect that with SV41, invariably it will enter into the lytic cycle. Whereas in case of the mouse or even the hamster or even the humans, so now this will enter into the lysogeny, what we call this as a non-permissible cell. So here the host is going to determine whether the SV40 should enter into the lytic cycle or the lysogeny cycle. So we call this as a permissible cells. Another one is going to be the non-permissible cells in fact. So now whether it is the lytic or it is the lysogeny, so we are going to study the whole process in 3 different stages. So the first stage last will for about 8 hours, the second one is the 4 hours, and the third one is going to be the 36 hours. So there is what is known as an early transcription that will take around like 8 hours. Then we have the DNA replication, it will last for about 4 hours. Then we have the late transcription in fact. So the moment there is an SV40 infection, I told you it acts like a mini chromosome because of the presence of these 24 nucleosomes in fact. So all these histone proteins has to be released. So this takes place in the cytoplasm, and then this circular DNA will enter into the nucleus, and then it will have an integration into the system. So now then that's where I think there is a release of what is known as an early transcription. This early transcription releases what we call this as an antigen. We call this as a T antigen. Okay. Now this T antigen is important because this T antigen, in case of a lytic cell, it will allow the lytic process to continue. Whereas in case of the same T antigen, in case of a lysogeny, that is in the non-permissible, so it will enter into the lytic cycle. So T antigen, the early transcription or the production of T antigen is very critical. Now this T antigen in a permissible cells, so it is responsible for the lytic, and in the non-permissible is responsible for the lysogeny. So now this is the 3 stages in fact. So now we will just look into the organization of the various genes or the genetic material in case of the SV40. I told you this is the circular DNA. Now there is an origin of replication. So we are going to study about the early transcription, DNA replication, and late transcription. Now this is the early transcription. So now here I think this is a very classical example of multiple splicing. Okay. So now in case of an early transcriptions, I think the T antigen is very important. Okay. So now this is the mRNA. So now this has got a poly A tail, and now the splicing takes place differently in different hosts. Okay. So now in case of permissible, so where it will enter into the lytic cycle, now this mRNA will splice to provide what we call this as a T antigen. Now the T antigen in case of permissible, so now that one will produce a protein of 90 kilodalton. It's a T antigen. On the other hand, in case of a non-permissible, the same mRNA will splice differently. So now that one is a smaller protein, it's 18 kilodalton. So that is represented by a small T antigen. So whether it is permissible or a non-permissible, or whether it is lytic or a lysogeny, the production of T antigen is very important. Now that is the part of the early transcript. So it is the same mRNA is going to be synthesized, but the splicing takes place. So now here we are going to produce a larger 90 kilodalton protein, and here we are going to produce a smaller T antigen, that is 18 kilo. It's the same mRNA but spliced differently, and we are going to get two different antigen. Now that is the process of, that is the early transcription. Now these T antigens are responsible for the DNA replication. Another one is going to be the late transcriptions. So we will just discuss about in case of a late transcriptions. I think now it is the origin of replication. I think the mRNA is going to be synthesized. So when you try to characterize these mRNAs, I think we are going to identify this as a 16S, an 18S, and another one is going to be the 19S subunit in fact. So it is the same mRNA, but we are going to splice differently. So now this is the splicing for the synthesis of VP1. Now this is for the VP2, and this is for the VP3. And we know that VP1 is a capsid protein. I think we are about 420 subunits. VP2 and VP3 are going to be the structural units in fact. So here the multiple splicing is a very characteristic feature of an SV40. The same genetic material, the same mRNA, but spliced differently to get different products in fact. So the early transcription part is important, DNA replication is important, and the late transcription is important. So now the T antigen, how this is going to be generated, and how these VP1, VP2, VP3 are going to be synthesized and done. So now using this, as well as the strategies which we have also discussed about the Phage DNA or the Cosmid-1 in terms of Phage vectors. So we also have designed vectors for lytic and also vectors for lysogeny in fact. So in case for the vectors for lytic, I think the T antigen is very critical. So once we do have the T antigen, so now we can only keep the structural protein or the VP1, VP2, VP3, and all other the DNA elements are all going to be removed, and that particular one is replaced with the DNA of our choice. But we need to have a thymidine kinase has to be implemented because that is the selection marker. Okay, whether it is a lytic or in case of a lysogeny. So in case of a lysogeny, I think this is much more popular basically because we only have the T antigen, then we have the thymidine kinase, then the entire the DNA segment which produces all these structural proteins and the capsid proteins can be removed. That can be replaced with the DNA of our choice. So now this is the strategies which are used. So in case of the animal vectors. So I think I will stop at this particular point, and I have almost more than 98% of our syllabus has been completely covered. So starting from the molecular mechanism or the tools required for the genetic manipulations, we discussed about restriction enzymes, then the vectors are important. So we also discussed about how to convert a blunt end to sticky end or a sticky end to blunt end, and we also discussed about the adapters and then the linkers, which are all going to be useful in case of genetic manipulations. Then we discussed about the vectors, and then vectors are the most challenging one. We do have vectors for prokaryotes, we do have vectors for eukaryotes. In eukaryotes, we have vectors for yeast, we have vectors for plants, and we have vectors for animals. But all these vectors are all created with one versatile vector is going to be the PBR322. I think we have discussed how the PBR322 has been designed and how vital that particular one. So then the clonal selections which will make us so that all those DNA segments are going to be incorporated into the PBI 322, and we design all kind of vectors. All right. So I hope these videos will be of useful, and it is as good as listening to the class, so you can study well. I'm sorry because this I had to complete at the last minute because of the various regulations given by the MHRD. I'll make sure that the Rakesh will upload all those things by today evening. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best in your upcoming examinations. Thank you.